Right now, though, not since the GFC have small business owners been subjected to information overload on business failure and the perils of navigating what some are dubbing the new normal. We thought we'd find out about that this morning and some help that is at hand for you with Ballarat-based insolvency expert from SMB Advisory. It's Justin Howlett. G'day, Justin.
Morning, Brett.
Nice to have you on the show. What do you do day to day, Justin? An insolvency expert. Please explain.
Yeah, certainly. So I guess fundamentally it's an accounting practice, but we don't specialise in your run-of-the-mill or traditional accounting services. So, for example, I don't do tax returns and sets of accounts. We and my practice specialise in companies or businesses or individuals that are in some form of financial distress, all the way from there's a court case tomorrow to wind up a company, all the way through to we're going okay, but things could be a little bit better. How do we have? What can we do? And everything in between, of course. So,
Justin, when we see you and your team on a business's doorstep, it's not necessarily a bad thing?
No, correct. Provided we've been in early enough. And that's part of the problem we as an industry have as well. People tend to turn to their accountant in the first point of call, and if a meeting is arranged with somebody like me or somebody from my profession, people do tend to fear the worst. And whilst in a formal capacity, I do wear the hat of a liquidator or an administrator or things of that nature. The current environment, it's probably 50-50 in terms of, unfortunately, we do have to wear that hat from time to time. But the pandemic has led to businesses being a bit more savvy about just analysing where they're at in terms of saying, well, do I need to speak to somebody in terms of, I think the future could be okay, but if it's not, what is plan B, C or D?
Justin, you're Ballarat-based, but you work nationally. What are you seeing in our city as far as insolvencies go?
Yeah, look, unfortunately, there's been a spike. Now, of course, I'm one of many that do what I do in Victoria, let alone Australia. But you're right, residing in Ballarat, operating predominantly out of sort of Melbourne, but Ballarat, Greater Western Victoria, Geelong, Bendigo. Look, I've never been busier in terms of inquiries or people putting their hand up for help. But as I said before, that's not always terminal appointments. A lot of it is people saying, listen, we don't know where we stand. Can you come and just help us, flesh it out a bit more? But the insolvency statistics that people see in the mainstream media, they tend to focus on the household names or the bigger end of town, so to speak. But on a purely mum and dad business point of view, especially around Ballarat and Western Victoria, there is unfortunately a spike in financially distressed businesses. There's no doubt about it.
So here we are opening up and, we're trying to put this pandemic thing behind us. But from a business perspective, Justin, you're saying it's just as tough as it ever has been over the last 2 and a bit years.
Oh, no doubt, Brett. And look, there's a couple of factors at play. The pandemic, of course, is the number one. Ballarat's a really good example. We were spared from the majority of lockdowns in terms of, our metropolitan friends and family were locked down and we had some freedoms that they didn't have for a long period of time. But in terms of the flow on financial impacts, we're hit as hard, if not harder than most. But there are a lot of businesses, and Ballarat's a really good example, where it could be a gateway on the road to other tourist attractions. The novelty is worn off. There was a bit of a sugar hit in the early days. People would get day trippers to come and go to a winery or on the way through and stop for a coffee, something to eat, or even an overnight stay on the way to Adelaide, for example. Whereas those people now we're seeing are tending to venture interstate or overseas now that we can. So there's a lot of that flow on effect. And what we're seeing too is not only the pandemic, interest rate rises, as you touched on before, but the biggest impact we're seeing now is the banks and the ATO in particular are waking from their slumber as well, putting a lot of pressure on businesses.
Yeah, we're expecting more news there next week. And in fact, I think it was CommBank came out yesterday and put up their rates even without the Reserve Bank saying we're heading north. Can you believe that?
Yeah, that's right. And look, it's the impacts we're seeing are, it is the businesses themselves, the physical impacts of higher interest rate costs, the ATO knocking on the door saying, hey, listen, we need to have a chat. But even the sort of the mental side of those things, a business, if they feel they're struggling, even reading the media about the doom and gloom of the economy around them, unfortunately that tends to bring some people down as well. But what it's also doing is, sparking people into action.
Yeah, good news. I'm speaking to Justin Howlett this morning, a Ballarat-based insolvency expert from SMB Advisory. Cheer us up a bit, Justin. There is some help at hand, right?
Absolutely. Now, a business, your first point of call traditionally is the accountant. and it always has been and probably always should be. What we do see now, and the pandemic's been a really good example of this, is people, and in regional Victoria it's magnified, they are often reluctant to reach out to their accountant for a number of reasons. Look, I hate and dislike the word stigma with a passion, but the stigma of a financially distressed business is magnified in regional areas. But for a number of factors, the increased social interactions with people and their advisors are often friends. So there's that reluctance first and foremost.
Yep.
But also people can't approach their accountant because if there's a debt owed there, that they're reluctant to go there. Or even in some cases, accountants won't meet with the client until that account is brought up to date. Now, whilst the accountant is the first point of call, there is always somewhere to turn. So predominantly there is the National Debt Helpline, so a confidential free service, and it's essentially a helpline. There are some outstanding, we work closely with them, there's some outstanding financial counsellors available at any point in time to discuss a business, and they can offer advice, and they have a really good network of people such as ourselves and lawyers and other insolvency professionals that can help people navigate a way forward. And in Ballarat in particular, in Western Victoria, the Rural Financial Counselling Service is another fantastic resource, free of charge again, and they also have increased funding and boosting for a small business program as well. So not only do they deal with people on the land, any small business in regional Victoria can approach them for some free of charge and confidential financial counselling.
I'm pretty sure CAFs offer a free financial counselling service in Ballarat as well.
Again, spot on. And again, a fantastic team there specialising in individuals and companies or businesses that are in financial difficulty. And even across the region, even city councils have their own internal counselling services a lot of the time. Yeah,
okay. We encourage people to speak about their mental health a lot, Justin. I guess our takeaway from our discussion with you today is don't be afraid to talk about your business's health just the same.
Oh, 100%. Could not agree more. And unfortunately, on a daily basis, we see people who do leave it too late. Much like mental health with your business, I'm yet to experience people being too early to put their hand up, but there can always be a too late.
Yeah, fascinating insight, Justin. It's good to know that as an insolvency expert, it's not just sort of grim reaper stuff. You're actually there helping businesses out when you can. Thanks for the update on Ballarat today, Justin. We'll talk again soon, I'm sure.
Thanks a lot, Brett.
On